From the nation's capital, this is the Fly Fishing Consultant Podcast with your host, Rob Snowhite.
Thank you for downloading the Fly Fishing Consultant Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Snowhite. This is being produced by Jason Reef of Freestone Media. This is Series 2, Episode 49, Captain Joe D. This is all about the Delaware River system, something I've read about in the past but didn't know much about. Got a pretty good understanding after listening to this with Joe. I think we're going to have to do a second podcast on his saltwater experience. But in the meantime, sit back and wait for the sound of me dropping my jaw when he explains some of the crazy shenanigans that the fish will do up there. This podcast is being brought to you by Ayoba-Yo USA. If you need some local biltong, don't hesitate to go to your local Whole Foods and ask, will you carry Ayoba-Yo? Because the ones in the DC metro area do. That website for Ayoba-Yo is ayoba-yo.com. Your source for locally made biltong, which is a classic South African dried meat. He also has sausages and dried meat sticks. So please visit those websites. Visit Joe's website. He's checking in from a McDonald's parking lot, so stay tuned for some background noises from people going in and out, and wait to find out if someone walks up to him, and just wait to see if someone walks up to him and thinks he's a loiterer. So stay tuned. This is Delaware River System 101 with Captain Joe D. Let's dive right in.
All right.
So this podcast, we have Captain Joe. How do you pronounce your last name for those who might have an issue reading?
Demalderis.
Demalderis.
That's why It's usually just Joe D.
I mean, with my last name, no one even believes me that my name's Snow White. So I have to take out my driver's license like 6 days a week. So where are you right now?
Right now, I am glomming on a free Wi-Fi at McDonald's.
Okay.
Okay.
That works. Did you get a cup of coffee or some fries?
I just got a cup of coffee and sitting in the AC in my truck.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So if people are going to be listening on their phones or their computers, where can they follow you on social media as we go along?
Okay. Well, my name, Joe Demalderis, on Facebook. My website is flyfishthedelaware.com.
All right.
Okay.
And where did you grow up? How'd you get into all of this?
How to get into all this? I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, in the neighborhood of Marine Park, kind of right off Jamaica Bay, and I spent my first 17 years there. And my grandfather had retired when I was about 3 years old. Took me virtually every single day it wasn't probably pouring out to the bay, and we'd fish off of piers and bulkheads, and that's what got me into fishing. I was also very fortunate. My grandparents had a little summer cottage, and I spent all my summers there, and that was, trout streams and wild trout streams and stock trout streams, and some ponds and lakes right nearby too.
Sounds a lot very similar to how I grew up. My grandparents, one was on the ocean in Florida, one was inland, so I could have bass in the morning and saltwater in the afternoon. It was a pretty cool way to grow up.
That's good. Hey, Rob, real quick, are you recording? When you call back, the little lady didn't come on.
I hear it now. Yeah, she said it on my end.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. All right. So when did fly fishing come into play?
Fly fishing came into play. I talked my mother into driving me to this one stream nearby my grandparents' cottage all the time. And I would go there with worms and spinners and salmon eggs and whatever else I thought trout might bite. And I'd see fish rising, and I'd cast my junk at them and nothing had happened. And two old guys fished there often, and I'd always see them catch fish with fly rods. So I don't know, I was probably about 13 years old, 12 years old, something like that. And talked my mother into buying me a fly rod and reel. So, and I had a little spin pack of flies like bumblebees and things like that. And I showed up at this stream, and the two old guys thought they'd see me all the time. I think they would get annoyed at me, but they were polite enough not to ever say anything to me because they'd be fishing and I'd be flopping spinners and worms and stuff at the fish that were rising. And when they saw me show up with a fly rod, they thought that was kind of cute, I think. And they kind of pulled me aside and just started telling me stuff. And
That's awesome.
I got my first fish on a fly, and I was hooked ever since.
So for mentors growing up, would you say it's some of those old timer guys took you under their wing?
Yeah, those guys. And then when I was in my early 20s, I became friends with a guy who lived not too far from me, and his father was an outdoor writer. And this guy ended up in Montana. He ended up moving to Montana. We stayed great friends. He opened a fly shop out there. Unfortunately, he died too young, but he really taught me a lot too. Took me under his wing really and taught me a lot of stuff. And then really was just glomming everything I can get my hands on, every book, magazines, just constantly reading. But mostly it was just trial and error in the end, just kind of making the mistakes and being, I guess, I don't know, thick-headed enough. I wasn't going to give up.
People nowadays, I don't think they know how good they have it with the internet and all the TV shows and print media and podcasts. I mean, I had just the black and white books from the 50s at the library when I was a kid.
Oh yeah, that's what it was. It was it was all the old books and magazines, pure fly fishing magazines. Then they may have existed, but I didn't know what they were. So I would get Field and Stream and Outdoor Life and Sports Afield and all those magazines, and hope that month there'd be a fly fishing article in them. And often there were, and just try to learn what I could. Looking at that, and then I remember my uncle bought me McLean's Fly Fishing or Fishing Encyclopedia. I don't know if you ever saw that. It's a big giant book. It weighs about 30 pounds, and that had a lot in it on fly fishing. All about line weights and tapers and rods and fast action and slow action and reels and leaders and tippet, and that really helped me a lot. That little reference book or big reference book.
All right, so when did you make the jump from a recreational fisherman to doing it to earn a paycheck?
To earn a pay, well, I guided part-time on and off. Actually did a little bit of charter boat mating in high school, and then was in another business prior, which wasn't really a fun business, but it paid the bills. And then just one day I decided, all I ever did was go fishing all the time. Owning a business gave me the freedom to not show up and go fishing more than I would actually go to work. So one day I just decided I'm just going fishing for the rest of my life. And that was that. So
it's a good choice to make.
Yeah, it was about 23 years ago.
And then when I don't really see we formally met, but there was an Orvis guide rendezvous in Santa Nona years ago. It was really cold and raining.
Mm-hmm.
It was maybe in like March. And I think that year you were the Orvis Guide of the Year.
Yeah, well, that was 2010. And that year I went to the rendezvous in Wyoming. And I probably went to Santa Nona too, because it's kind of close for me.
It was not close for me, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, no, Santa Nona is about 90 minutes for me to get there, so it wasn't that big a deal. Because I remember going to a couple of them there when they had them there, and I just don't remember if I went that year or not to that one. But I do remember being there one year where it was very miserable. I remember that. It was rainy and cold and windy.
Yeah. All right. So what I want to do, the meat and potatoes of this podcast, I want to just learn all about the Delaware. I know there's a lot of people too. Client Fred, he said I must have read his mind when I told him I was having you on because he wants to know as much as he can. So let's dive right in and talk about the Delaware. So if you could tell us, like, so where are the headwaters and where does it empty?
The Delaware is a tailwater, so it's two rivers, the east branch of the Delaware and the west branch of the Delaware, and they join together in Hancock, New York, and form the main Delaware River, and that goes all the way down past Philadelphia, down into Delaware Bay. So it's about 325 miles before it hits the ocean. And we're only talking about the very top part. So the west branch is 15 miles long, roughly, and the east branch is roughly 30 miles. And then the main river tailwater seasonally will go anything from 30 miles down to 2 or 3 miles. It just depends on how hot a summer it is. And but you always have the 15 miles of the west branch and the very top of the east branch. The east branch is long and wide. It gets wide as it comes down. The Beaver Kill joins it. That dumps a lot of warm water into it. The river widens, and that lower stretch, which is about half the river, gets kind of warm. So if you stay up above the Beaver Kill, most of the time that water's cold all season. When it gets real hot, that'll shrink down to maybe 6 miles of river that's fishable. We're safe. We're not going to hurt the fish. And so it just depends on the time of year. Sometimes we have 80, 85 miles of river. Sometimes we have 20 miles of river.
So when it's shortened like that, does it get more crowded?
Yes and no. It gets more crowded in places. It's the places, either it's easy access or it's kind of known named pools, everybody just kind of gravitates to. So you'll have, areas of the river where, you'll have 15 people in sight, and you have other areas of the river where you don't see anybody in any direction. It's like this weekend was a great example. It was hot. The main stem is, you couldn't fish that. It was too warm. The upper east branch is really low water right now, and it's really, really, really challenging for most people. It's low and slow and crystal clear.
It's crazy dry down here in DC. Like our river is it's dropping. Mm-hmm. Plants are all wilting everywhere.
Yeah,
it really hasn't rained since the 4th.
No, we're dry. We've had a few thunderstorms here and there, but so I've been on the West Branch for the last week exclusively, and there are times where I'll flow through an area, go behind guys, and there's a whole bunch of guys, and I go around the next bend, and I don't see anybody for another 2 miles, and there's fish. It's not like there's fish only in certain places. There's fish throughout the whole river. Just some places are just easier for guys to get to, or they just know them. They feel more confident there. Or, I don't know, I think sometimes someone sees someone else fishing somewhere and figure that must be the spot, So it's almost like, they look at other anglers like seagulls, it's like seagulls on the ocean. That's where the fish are. And, yep. I never understood that, but it seems
that was us today. There was a kid fishing downstream from us, water we had pounded already. He goes out with the dinkiest looking foam bug and pulls out a snakehead.
Nice.
And I just looked at him like, man, we've been here for nearly 3 hours and didn't even know there's a snakehead down there.
That's kind of a bonus.
Yeah, he just walked right in.
Yeah. Fortunately, we don't have any snakeheads. Fortunately.
Yeah. How long have those dams been in place? Were they like hydroelectric?
No, the New York City water supply. So
okay.
The short story is in the mid-30s, New York City dammed the Neversink River, which is a major tributary to the Delaware, and they dammed the east branch of the Delaware, put 2 big reservoirs in on 2 of the bigger tributaries. And when they did that, they reduced the flow in the main river, and it affected the river all the way down below Philadelphia. So the salt line moved up, and it got into Philadelphia. It contaminated New Jersey's aquifer, and the state of New Jersey sued the city of New York. So you have a state suing another municipality or whatever. So it ends up in the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court didn't make a ruling per se or pass a law. What they did was they created a decree, and they formed what's known as the decree parties. So it's all the states that border the river plus the city of New York, which is not in the basin. So you have the state of Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, and the city of New York that make the water management decisions for the river, and they set a minimum flow target to keep the salt line down to where it's supposed to be. And any changes to that plan has to be done by all those parties unanimously. So everyone has a veto power. So if everyone says, hey, let's put some more water in, protect the cold water habitat, and one person says no, one state or city says no, it doesn't happen. So every decision has to be unanimous. So that becomes quite a challenge right there. It's not done on 2/3 or majority. And in there's the Delaware Basin Commission, the Delaware River Basin Commission, and they're kind of the administrative end to carry out what the decree parties say. They don't really make any decision. They just carry out what the decree parties want to do. And so they're kind of an administrative thing. But, there's a lot of complexity to the whole thing, between different committees, different issues that come up, and, transparency that exists. We never even, know if these decree parties, which are technically the governors of each state and the mayor of New York City, if they actually ever sit down and meet together. They all appoint someone to represent them, and then they have these meetings to make their decisions, their water management decisions. But it's not a public meeting. You can't go to it. You don't know where it is, or if it even exists, or if they just do it on telephone, or what they do. But that's the program. That's how it works.
Are they the ones that decide when water's released?
Well, no, they decide what the water release is going to be if it's outside the original Supreme Court ruling, which basically is 1,750 cubic feet per second of water at a gauge in Montague, New Jersey, okay, which is roughly just south of Port Jervis, New York. Just to give you a picture on the map, that's where Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York all meet. Or it's about 85 miles south of Hancock, New York, right? So that gauge minimum flow has to be 1,750 cubic feet per second. Then there was a river master position created. So the river master is the guy who does all the calculations, saying, okay, the water's dropping. We need so much water released from the reservoir to keep that flow at a minimum. It's going to take, 50 hours to get here. So New York City, you have to start releasing an extra 211 cubic feet or whatever the number is. So the river master, who is with the United States Geological Survey, he's the guy who does the physical calculations and watches what's going on.
That's a lot of red tape with all of that together.
Tremendous. Then there are times, when we have thermal issues and we petition to get everybody together to give us a little more water for habitat protection, and just trying to get everybody together to do that is like herding cats. It's who's away, who's on vacation, who can't. So, you have a thermal situation. By the time you get everyone to meet and say yay or nay, it's often too late. Most times it is too late. It's a day or two too late.
The fish start going belly up?
No, they don't go belly up. They hunker down. They find places to go. There are spring holes. There are some cold water tributaries that they can find refuge in. They will move upriver into, they'll follow a cold water plume upriver. Seldom is it like a stranding situation. That doesn't, that it very infrequent, every couple of decades that might happen. That's not something that happens frequently. But it does put them under a lot of stress. And when the water temperatures get up in those 70, 72, 74 degree ranges sometimes. At night it'll cool down, so the fish are fine. They catch their breath again, and then during the day it pops right back up again. And people are fishing to those fish. Anything they hook is going to be a dead fish. But I mean, there's no way around that.
What species of fish are you targeting, and what is considered a bycatch fish up there?
Brown trout. They're all wild browns and wild rainbows, and the rainbows have been in the river since before there was the tailwater. They were in the main stem. That they got in there by accident, according to the whole story, which is pretty validated. So they got into the river back in the late 1890s, and once the tailwaters were formed, those populations of rainbow trout just took right off. They just had that much more habitat. Brown trout was stocked by the states, and then they stopped stocking once it was shown that there was a strong wild population. There's some remnant brook trout here and there still around. I mean, historically, it was a brook trout fishery way back before land use practices and other factors changed the river. Physically changed the river. Made it shallower and wider, and took away a lot of cover. And the brook trout pretty much disappeared in with remnant populations in some of the tributaries.
Do the shad make it up where you guys are?
Yeah, the shad bump into the dams. They get
Really?
they get all the way right up onto the dams. Especially on the East Branch, you get a bigger run that run up the East Branch, and then a bunch run up the West Branch. Yeah, American shad make it all the way up, and
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is real cool. Like,
Do you ever get those by accident? Just
Well,
like swinging a fly and
sometimes by accident, sometimes on purpose. In late May, you can have a little slowdown in the middle of the day and get great sight fishing opportunities for shad, and it's kind of like bone fishing in your tactics, and it's kind of fun. They'll come up and they'll eat dry flies. I don't know why they can't even swallow them, but they do. They hit dry
That's
flies.
crazy.
Yeah,
I've never heard of a shad taking a dry fly.
Real common. Often I'll see somebody hook a shad and they don't realize they hooked a shad. They got pretty good sized shad and the thing is just peeling line off their reel, and they think they just hooked the biggest rainbow they ever hooked in their life, but it was a shad. You see it jump and that's a shad.
That is bizarre.
But no, it's you can target them with dry flies. I mean, it's not. Sometimes
I've never heard of
annoyance.
I don't know why I've never heard of that till now. I mean, I've been reading about the Delaware since I was a kid.
Yeah, no,
Never heard of that.
They, when the sulfurs are hatching, that's usually when they'll start hitting dries, and most of them are post spawn, but not all of them. And they'll, for some reason, they like sulfurs. They just like yellow bugs. It just seems that if you want to catch a shad on a fly, put a sulfur parachute on, and you'll catch them.
Wow, that might be a bucket list thing right there.
Yeah, it's fun. It's really fun. I mean, a lot of guys don't like doing it. They look at shad almost as a trash fish, and I think it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
There's no trout feeding. There's nothing going on right now. The trout aren't going to start up for another 2 hours. Hey, let's catch a few shad. It beats catching chubs.
And then when in the fall here, when our shad start getting ready to go to the ocean, the stripers and other fish really key in on shad fry. Little shad like 2 inches. Do the trout? Are you throwing little shad flies?
Yeah, shad, alewives, bunker. I mean, they're all in the same family. They're all in the herring family, and baby shad look like a slightly smaller version of a peanut bunker, really. And yeah, they key in on those. And then as you get further down the river, the smallmouth really key in on them in a bigger way.
So how far do you have to go down before it goes? Kind of terminates the trout habitat and turns into smallmouth habitat?
About 25 miles downriver, it becomes mostly a smallmouth fishery. And then as you get 50 miles downriver, it becomes a really, really, really good smallmouth fishery. And just a lot of them. Not huge, but there's just a lot of fish.
Do people ever do extended day floats where they bring their camping gear and do trout like the first day all the way down, and then the second day would be smallmouth?
there's really not too many opportunities to do that. All the land is private, although the river, the main stem of the Delaware, is a wild and scenic recreational river under the National Park Service, and it's patrolled by the National Park Service. The Park Service only owns a few acres, and that's where their main office is. So all the land for mostly is all private. There is on the upper Delaware, on the river, there's only one campground, one private campground you can stay in. And the logistics of doing both really don't exist. Early in the spring, logistically, you can do a 2-day float on for trout fishing, but not, we got to do a combo of bass and trout.
Okay. So now, speaking of the tailwater, that directly influences the insect activity, and this is it's a big bug factory, right?
Totally. It's you got to look at it as in character. It's it's a tailwater, and in form, it's like a freestone, riffle run pool. But in the way it fishes and the way the fish behave, it's like a spring creek. So it's like it's like a giant spring creek, and being technical, there's zillions of bugs. I mean, it's every bug that hatches in east of the Mississippi, we get a hatch of, and some besides that. We get Pteronarcis stoneflies, like the salmon fly you get out west. We get that bug too, and golden stoneflies are real good hatch on the East Branch and on the main river. And the hatches last a real long time because they'll start in different places. So you could fish, let's say, a Hendrickson hatch, where it would start usually on the main stem a little bit earlier downriver because it's just a little bit warmer, and just follow that hatch all the way upriver and probably catch it for 4 weeks in most years if you wanted to. If you're that type, but once they end, and then March Browns start, so why would you leave areas? So now you got March Browns. Oh well, But if you wanted to, you could do that. Green Drake's the same thing.
And what type of gear are you fishing? If you had just like one rod and reel outfit, and is there a specific leader you're throwing? Are these fish spooky?
Yeah.
What do you need to go out fish the Delaware?
They're spooky. In the summer, they're spooky, or low water, they're really spooky. And sunny days, just like any place else. I mean, they're fish. They're not, they're fish. And they're wild fish. They behave like wild fish do every place. They just have a tremendous amount of food, so they don't have to be opportunists. They eat when they want to eat. There's food in front of them all the time. So that makes it a little hard. The hatches can be extremely prolific, and they say a sulfur hatch, for example, you can have so many bugs on the water at once that your fly could get lost in the mix. So timing and accuracy become real important. So because of that, I like a fast rod. 5 weight's fine, and the reason I like a fast rod is because you can be a little more accurate with it than you're going to be with a slower rod. So you can have more accuracy, hit your targets, and get a good presentation. Everything's on a reach cast. I mean, very seldom are you going to not throw a reach cast on that river. Get your fly leading the way. Don't no influence by the leader or the fly line. Just let that fly look and behave as most like a real fly as you can. You usually don't have to get below 6x. In the springtime, 4x, 5x is what you're on. Then you get to a point where you're just mostly 5x, and then now you're on 6x. Tricos you might have to get on 7x because you just start to fish really tiny stuff, and you just need that smaller diameter to have less impact on the behavior of the fly.
How far are some of these casts? People have to be. It's not like Florida Keys. They throw in.
No, most of the time you could. That depends. If you're wading, you can get closer to fish than you can if you're fishing out of a boat. But sometimes you can't get close to fish wading because the water's too deep, especially on the main river. But most of the time, if you can cast 30 feet, you could be successful. You know, I'd rather see someone who can cast short and well than someone who's long and who knows where it's going. You know, the guy who's short and accurate and can get a really good drift has got an advantage over someone who can cast 70 feet and not get a good drift. And there's so many currents and swirls and, you know, all these little seams that you're crossing at those distances that it's really hard to get a drift for but a few feet. So accuracy becomes really more critical. And so if you're not accurate at 70 feet, keep the 70 feet on the reel and just get yourself closer, sneak in.
And you mentioned boat fishing. How's the access? Are there boat ramps up and down?
Yeah, boat access is decent. Now the West Branch has a lot of access for boats. There's enough access for boats, and there's plenty of wade access, you know, public access. The Upper East Branch, what I call Upper East Branch, is upstream of the Beaver Kill Junction, has a decent amount of foot access. Not much boat access. Actually, on the whole East Branch, there really isn't a lot of boat access. And on the main stem, you have every few miles. So you have the longest stretch you'll go would be 10, 11 miles for boat access on the main river. And
how long does it take to float that?
Oh, it depends on how high the water is. If we just had a massive rain and the river's flowing at 30,000 CFS, you'll probably do it in 20 minutes. But it's really not how long your float's really not based on how long or how high the river is. It's you pretty much how the fishing is. So some days and you want to fish, you want to float short and fish long. You know, spend more time fishing than floating. And then other times you want to, you know, especially high dirty water, you can float long and still fish more, but you're fishing different. It's a lot of streamer fishing, you know, bank banging, cover the banks and cruising along. So it's a little bit different. But, you know, more often than not, you're out of the boat fishing just as much as you're in the boat fishing.
So on a hot day, that's got to be real nice.
That's great.
Jumping in and out.
Yeah, totally.
And the water clarity is pretty good.
Water clarity is really good. Yeah, water clarity for the most part is always good. After rain, you know, it could cloud up, or big storms, you can get chocolate milk, just like anywhere. But under average conditions, no, it's clear. It's clear. It's pristine.
And then the seasonality, are you guys fishing all winter below the tailwater before it freezes?
No, basically the part of the West Branch that's entirely in New York State, which is roughly half of it, closes October 15th, and most of the spawning takes place in that section of the river. So it closes for fish to spawn. It doesn't open again until April. And the East Branch closes, part of it closes the same date, and then the lower stretch will close on November 30th and not open again till the spring. Then the border waters between Pennsylvania and New York, they stay open year round, catch and release. But the reality is most years, you get unusual years like we had this year, where it was fishing in March. That I've never seen that before, actually, like this year. Hendrickson's were hatching in March. But typically it's mid-April until the end of October. That would be a typical year.
And what do you do to entertain yourself when the river is shut down, closed for fishing?
I'm fishing the Jersey Shore. I have a boat down there too. I run. So I'm fishing false albacore and striper run in the fall, and then I'm every other year it probably averages out. I'm in Patagonia hosting trips down there with clients, and then I'm in the Bahamas for 5 or 6 weeks doing the same thing.
That's pretty sweet.
So yeah, it's year round. It's full time. I'm on the water maybe 250 days a year, 260 days a year.
And on the Delaware, are there easier stretches than others? Like if someone goes into a fly shop and says, "Hey, I want to go fish," do they send them to like a particular one spot just to have all the rubes go to and keep the other places free? Are there like definite easier spots to fish?
It depends on how someone wants to fish. The the pools on the main river are really big, so you have huge flat pools, and some of them are really deep. As far as wading goes, they're deep. And then you have riffles and runs. You have some really long riffles that are half a mile, 3/4 of a mile long. Most of the time, you're going to put people in those places. You're going to recommend that to them, especially if it's their first time, because they'll have an easier time getting a presentation and moving water than they're going to on that flat, smooth water. They won't have to cast as far, and they just feel more comfortable. They can break the river down. They'll see seams, and they'll see, rocks and, little pockets, and, they can not be so intimidated by the width of the river. They can break it down into manageable pieces.
And you mentioned rocks. What kind of boat are you rowing through there?
I'm rowing a drift boat.
Which brand?
Fear No Rock, Clackacraft.
Okay. Yeah, I fear rocks with my stealth craft, so I don't really take it upriver on the Potomac too much.
Yeah, and I've been using my first 2 boats weren't Clacks. My last 5 or 6 have been Clackacrafts, and they hold up well. I mean, you don't want to, if you're not really skilled in rowing, you don't want to be on the river when it's high, and you don't want to be on the river when it's low. So there's that in between stage.
Gotta be like Goldilocks.
Yeah. But it's and it's also, in the late spring and through the summer, there's a lot of right at dark action that happens. And if you don't know the river, you don't want to try to navigate it and get out in the dark. It's just not a smart thing. But
are there fatalities up there? People getting, I know somebody down here, I think they were tubers, got stuck overnight because they didn't realize how low the water was.
Yeah,
pretty much exposed all night.
A few years ago, there was a teenage kid who drowned. They were canoeing the river. I think they were at the summer camp. And then a guy here, there were 2 different people I heard of in the last few years that they either drowned in the river, or they had heart attacks and fell in the water. It was never really known exactly what happened. I saw one boat flip this year, a rental boat with 3 guys in it. And, I've seen 2 guides over the years flip their boats.
I can't imagine what it would take to flip a drift boat. But then again, mine's pretty big.
Yeah, the last one I heard flip was a stealth. So
really,
yeah, when the water was high, it was on a hairy side, but things happen quick, as if you have a drift boat.
Absolutely.
Or any boat, anytime you're on the water, things happen really, really fast. And he's a very experienced guy too, so I'm not faulting anyone there. It's just one of those things that, things happen fast. And fortunately, nobody drowned. Everybody ended up okay, and just, using your head and not panicking and having the right safety gear, and get through those situations. I saw a boat. Well, I saw a boat flip many years ago, maybe 17, 18 years ago. He was in front of me, but he was going sideways down a riffle, and you hit something going sideways, it could not end up pretty most of the time.
Yes, there's some scary stuff out there.
Well, not really, just
yeah, like you said, 17 years ago, and it hasn't happened that much since.
No, it's like anything. You just use your head. Just remember to only fish, and only going fishing, and it's recreation first, and you just be safe about it. It's just like riding a bicycle or whatever else, people do. You just don't be dumb,
Yeah, we just had a kid drown in one of the lakes down the street here about 2 nights ago. Don't know what happened, but out swimming after dark, who knows?
Yeah, you don't know.
But don't put yourself in those situations.
No, and on the lower part of the river, we call the lower part, like 50 miles downriver, and then all the way down for hundreds of miles. There's a tremendous amount of rafting and tubing and canoeing that goes on, and there it's there are a lot of injuries, a lot of people flipping, getting hurt. People do drown every year, more than one.
I imagine there's a lot of booze involved in a lot of those activities.
Yeah, a lot of that is talking to park rangers. They all seem to say the same thing. It's usually there's a alcohol mix involved. And it's usually a male in his early 20s that's invincible.
Yep. We have what's called the Mather Gorge here between Great Falls and Georgetown. It drops, I don't know how much in elevation. We might get 24 drownings a year in, like 8 to 10 miles. And a couple years ago, it was young Marines and young Army guys in the summer that were hot and wanted to jump off a rock. They jumped in and never came up.
No,
I don't even know if they ever found them.
I mean, I think back when I was in my teens and 20s, I mean, I did a lot of stuff these people do now that get themselves in trouble, and I just write it off to sheer luck,
Yeah.
I mean, it's boys will be boys, I mean, I don't know how else to put it, but that's what happens. And your card wasn't drawn that day, or was drawn that day, whatever, but you just try to minimize the things that you do, and just don't be careless about anything. It's like I don't allow guys to drink in my boat. I mean, I just you're out fishing, you're in a beautiful setting. I mean, what more do you need? I mean, if you can't catch a buzz off that, you don't need to bring a couple of 6 months of beer.
Everyone's got a different tolerance too.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I say I don't allow guys. If somebody wants to bring a couple of beers for lunch or to cruise into the launch at night or something, fine. But we're not out there, on a
wasted.
Cruise. Absolutely,
right.
That doesn't happen.
That's what I did on Father's Day. We just had the trolling motor out on the lake, went around and sipped on cold beers. Pretty fun. Something I rarely do. The first time I ever drank and fished, I broke all the toes in my left foot. So I learned my lesson.
Yeah, that scared straight.
Yeah.
No, you miss too many fish, and you don't perform as well either. Although when you catch something, you do think it's a lot bigger than what it really is.
So speaking of big fish, what are some of the sizes? Are there any like big historic fish people have pulled out of there? Being that some of these fish have been in there so long.
Yeah, they're big fish. I mean, average fish is going to be somewhere 14 to 16 inches in that range. Lots of 18-inch fish, lots of them. And then a really good number of 20-inch fish. Like we're throwing a 20-inch to 23-inch fish almost every day. And then there are those 25 to 27, 28-inch fish that exist. There are fewer between, the biggest fish I know of was 31 inches. I showed two 30-inch fish that I know of. I'm sure there have been other ones that I've caught. But there are 25-inch fish, that I've caught every day, but they're caught enough, that they're in there, and not extremely rare. They're just extremely hard to catch.
They didn't get that big by being dumb.
No, not by being careless. I mean, they beat the eagles and ospreys and mink and mergansers and everything else trying to eat them, and the big fish, and so they're just real nervous, and the slightest little thing that happens, they're gone.
And how's I guess I want to lead into Friends of Upper Delaware.
Mm-hmm.
So how's is there litter on the river? How's like the the water quality of it? And like down here, it's just plastic and bottles and cans along the entire Potomac.
No,
I think
we're very, very fortunate that we've had a very real good, just group of people that do fish the river. Mostly really good etiquette people take out what they take in. Occasionally you find a piece of litter. Just about everyone I know will pick it up. So it's not like there's cans and bottles, and no, there's nothing like that at all. Do
you think the deposit in New York also helps? That people don't, like when I fish the Salmon River, there's always someone going through the parking lots picking up every can and bottle around to get money for it.
Yeah, no.
I wonder if we had that down here, it would reduce litter.
No, you really don't see that. And most of the people you see, they take their water bottles or whatever, they take them off the river and they just throw them in a trash can. They're not even bringing them back for the deposit. Now, people are just conscious of it. It is mostly a fly fishing culture. and people are very conscious of it. The guides on the river, all the guides I know, every single one of them will run down a stray bottle that might have blown out of somebody's boat or canoe or something, and net it and throw it in their boat, and not just leave it in the river. And even at boat launches, you never see garbage around. It's so rare that happens. Now, we have done some river cleanups because there have been a few instances where it's not so much garbage on the banks and in the river, but it's just some knucklehead dumped a bunch of garbage off a road that happens to be along, a high bank of the river. And, we've had that happen. After flood events, you have debris that comes out of people's property, out of their yards or whatever, that end up in the river. But by and large, it's not like we see garbage. You just don't see it.
What about agricultural runoff? Do you have like a lot of nitrates coming in, fertilizers?
Yeah, we do, just like every place in the world. Basically, most of that is on the west branch above the reservoir. The upper west branch above the Cannonsville Reservoir drains a lot of agricultural land. It runs through a lot of agricultural area. So that reservoir the water is not as pure as the East Branch Reservoir, which primarily drains the high peaks of the Catskills. So, those things, so the West Branch gets more agricultural runoff. The East Branch gets very, very little, if any, of it. And then New York City, to protect their own water supply above the reservoirs, is constantly buying up as much land as they can to give themselves a buffer, to keep their reservoirs clean, so they don't have to build filtration plants and all that sort of stuff. And, so that makes a difference too. And they've also they paid towns to upgrade their water treatment plants to keep, the reservoirs clean.
And I think that water is the reason why the pastries and the bagels and pizza is so good in New York.
Well, that's
if you use different water.
They say it's New York City water. That's why there used to be a lot of breweries there. The water was really good. Same thing with bagels and pizza. And I don't know. I mean, one of my favorite things when I go into the city is to have a hot dog from a hot dog stand, and the dirtier the water, the better. So who knows?
Dirty water. I try to explain dirty water dogs to my wife. She didn't understand them. We did conies for my daughter's birthday.
It's good. Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we just had them all in a big crock pot.
Mm-hmm.
My wife's like, "What is that?" I'm like, "Those are dirty water dogs. They're seasoning themselves."
That's right.
All right, so tell us about Friends of Upper Delaware.
So Friends of the Upper Delaware, we are the flagship or premier organization that is fighting to keep better flows of water in the river. That's like a primary mission, to keep the cold water ecosystem intact, to preserve it, to protect it, and to enhance it, and to make it better, because it can be, and get water management plans, better. And it's it's a slow process, but little by little we're making inroads into that. But it's kind of like turning the Queen Mary around. You could cut an oar on your drift boat and spin it right around on a dime, but trying to turn the whole big bureaucracy around, it's like the QE2. You need all kinds of tugboats and ropes and lines, and it takes maybe 2 miles to turn it around. So it's not an easy task, but slowly but surely we're making inroads with the city of New York and gaining some cooperation, and getting New York and Pennsylvania, who border the whole cold water fishery, and working with us too, working with them to enhance the fishery. So we look at the cold water fishery, we're looking at environmental threats to the region that could pop up. So we want to, we keep an eye on that and do what we have to do to mitigate any kind of, or prevent any of those threats. Flooding for the local communities is something that we concern ourselves with, so people, personal property, real estate, and things don't get destroyed and end up in the river. And to create a river-based economy for the region. it's really a, economically depressed area. I don't know how else to put it, but it is. And, the river economy can be very strong and grow and get even better. So, doing that, doing community programs, teaching kids how to fly fish as an example, tie flies, local kids, get them involved. It's an education process. So that's what we do, and it takes a lot of fuel to do it. So we're always looking for memberships and donations to keep the fire stoked, and building a lot of partners like Trout Unlimited, and forming coalitions, being part of coalitions, and working with business owners, educating them on what the river has to offer for them, how it affects their own economics. So that's what we do. And, it's not an easy task, and it's a lot of stuff for a small little organization. But, using partners too, it kind of makes it a mountain that we all can climb together, not just one little organization trying to do it on their own.
And so we see the booth at Somerset every year.
Uh-huh.
How else do you guys get the word out? And by the way, there's the young lady that was helping out this past year at Somerset looks just like Abby from Flyman Fishing Company. And I got her confused, and I said something, and she walked right by me, and I was like, Abby just totally blew me off.
Oh,
And then
that's
someone's like, young lady with glasses.
Yeah. She actually lives
then
in the city now, but she's a local girl originally from the area. Yeah.
She was outside the bar, and I went into the bar at was it Doubletree or whatever, and I see Abby in there, and I'm like, wait, I just saw you out. And then I realized it was two different people, and I brought Abby out to meet her, and I got a picture of the two of them together, and they look like twins.
Yeah, they do look really similar. Yeah, so Sarah helps us at Somerset, and she helps us at our One Bug event we have every year, which is our biggest fundraising event. And she helps us Somerset summer raffle tickets, getting memberships from people. And she's a very pretty girl, and a lot of guys have a hard time saying no. So hey,
Excellent.
it works. So
you want to tell us more about that One Bug event?
the One Bug is a one fly tournament. We call it the One Bug. Basically, very, very similar to rule-wise to how Jackson Hole One Fly works. It is our major fundraiser, and it's a 2-day event with a one evening tossed in. It's a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But Friday evening is a big banquet that's open to everyone, and an auction, and that you could be you don't have to be a contestant in the tournament to attend that. We sell tickets just to that. People come to that, and then we have a 2-day tournament. It's bragging rights. You get a little cheesy trophy if you win one of the categories, and that's it. We've gotten really great support corporate-wise from industry people, which is really nice. Companies like Orvis and Patagonia and Hyde. I'm trying to think who else. I know I left somebody out, but they probably are, one of our bigger people. G. Loomis. Just about everyone helps us out, but Orvis has been real strong supporter in Patagonia also. And this year Hyde came in, and they've been a help supporting us. We raffled off one of the boats. That was a profitable thing for us. So it's it helps. It helps raise much needed revenue. That fuels everything. And we got last year, 2 years ago now, we completed one of the spawning tributaries. Got trashed in 06 floods, record floods in 2006, and we completed a spawning habitat project on one of the tributary streams. That was it was a huge project. We rehabilitated that stream and essentially put it back in its original channel, got the floodplain backwards, everything working the way it's supposed to. And then very next spring, rainbow trout were up there spawning. So that was really great. But it's expensive doing these things. We have a whole bunch more we want to do. And it just takes money to do those things. So, the One Bug helps us. National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, they help us a lot. Trout Unlimited, I mean, they're one of our close partners in a lot of stuff that we do and work towards. So it's pretty exciting. It's a pretty good group of people. Very, very conscientious, caring people that have a love for the river, and they just want to see that river stay, the way it is, and the habitat protected. It's good stuff.
And where can we find Fudder online?
FUDR.org. And you can find them on Facebook at Friends of the Upper Delaware River.
Fantastic. All right, so if you could sum up for us if you had like an elevator speech about why the Delaware is such a magical, unique river, what could you tell the listeners?
Well,
specifically, why they should come and fish with you specifically too.
Well, what makes it unique is that it's a big river system in the East Coast. It's a wild trout fishery, and so you have this really, really large river system, wild trout in it. It's really close to a lot of people. It's like a piece of paradise in this megalopolis. I mean, it's close to Boston, close to Philly, close to New York City. I mean, those are realistic driving distances. People come from Europe to fish there. I have clients that come over from Scotland every year, from Ireland, to come fish the Delaware, and because they have nothing that exists like that. And people come up from the south, the whole East Coast, from out west. We have people come to fish our one bug from California and from Washington State. So the river has a charm, and it's a beautiful setting. If you got dropped off in a helicopter and you wouldn't have a clue. If you've never seen the river before, you would think you were someplace not on the East Coast. You wouldn't think you were 2.5 hours from Manhattan, and that's big thing. It was 5 hours from Baltimore, and 3 hours from Philly, 2.5 hours from Manhattan. 4.5 hours from Boston. So there's millions and millions and millions of people that have fallen in love with that river and come there for trout fishing and their escape. So it's a real special place for that reason.
Fantastic. Well, I think that sums up this podcast. I don't want to take up too much of your time in the McDonald's parking lot. They might think you're a John or something. Yeah.
I did buy a coffee from them, so it's legit.
All right. Yeah. So one more time, where can we find your guiding service and where can we follow you on social media?
Okay, you can find me at flyfishthedelaware.com, or my name, Joe Demalderis, on Facebook, or Fly Fishing the Upper Delaware on Facebook, or Captain Joe D on Twitter. And
fantastic. And you're really good on Twitter. You post a lot of really good conservation information.
Well, thanks. I mean, those are issues that are important to me, and I know I post a lot of stupid things too. So, but you're being kind. But if you can stand my warped sense of humor, conservation stuff is good that I get between, I guess.
Absolutely. All right. So, are you working on the river tomorrow?
No, actually, today and tomorrow and the next day will be the first days off in a row I've had this season. And it'll be today was my 4th day off since April, so.
My goodness.
Tomorrow, patching my boat trailer, fixing some broken parts, and then hopefully Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm fishing.
All right, well, don't waste your valuable time sitting here with me. Go have fun.
I will do that. Rob, nice talking to you.
Thank you so much, Joe.
All right, you take care.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for the Fly Fishing Consultant Podcast. For more information or to contact Rob, please go to www.robsnowhite.com.